I get a lot of dumb customers. I call them dumb. They're not actually dumb. But a lot of the people I deal with claim to be. I've done the research. I've done the reading. Knowing full well that they haven't actually read much of anything, and they're just accepting stuff at face value. This was someone who's, well, I'm a Ukrainian, but... And then he went on to wax poetic, describing how Vladimir Putin is justified, and that, you know, now Ukrainians are suffering without heat and electricity, and it's their fault. Yeah. That's not something that sits well with me. I find that, frankly, creepy. Especially coming from a Canadian who is not Ukrainian, but claims to be Ukrainian, because they think that means something. Because it's that whole ethnic identity thing. And that's quite literally what this whole mess over is, some misguided ethnic identity. For some reason, to be a Canadian is not an ethnic thing. I've been told that I can't be ethnically Canadian. I have to be ethnically something else. Well, I am ethnically a Canadian. My culture is Canadian. Am I part of a whole bunch of subcultures? Sure. And the answer is yes, I am. The fact that I am a Canadian, and that this gentleman is a Canadian, that's a data point. And then there's all kinds of other data points to make up our identities. Ethnicity is just another data point that someone adds. And it's a data point that we can choose to alter by self-identifying or not identifying. And that's why I say it is possible to be an ethnic Canadian. And I prefer to identify as an ethnic Canadian. Why? Because, as I've said before, many people have heard me say this, friends and family, I have only ever walked this dirt. I have breathed this air, and I have drank the water. I haven't been anywhere else. I haven't lived anywhere else, but within the nation state of Canada. I have briefly left the nation state of Canada, but this is where I have lived. This is where I have raised my children. This is where I have buried my father. Here. The hell else can I be but a Canadian? I can identify as a prairie Canadian, because that's the specific landmass in which I have lived on. I am an urban Canadian because the majority of my life I've lived in cities. Very brief moments I've lived in a small rural community, handful of years, but not enough for me to identify as beyond being an urban Canadian. So, is an ethnic reference a justification for any kind of fighting of any kind? No. From any side. Is it an excuse to persecute somebody? Nope. Yet, that argument is being used by a Canadian man who's never set foot in Europe, who doesn't speak the language either, who claims to have a connection to that region of Europe, and he feels completely justified in claiming that, you know, that government is completely justified to see that people can die because of an ethnic identity. A data point. I could swear that, having being an avid student of history, that we have enough examples in the last 100 years of this planet's history on how well that does not work for us. How many more dead do we have to add? Forget the goddamn pandemic. Forget disease. Forget illness. Forget hurricanes. Forget earthquakes. How many more dead people do we have to add caused by an identity? Yeah.